Okay, let's say you are asking about the transient keyword, right? So yesterday I explained about transient keyword, right? What is the use of transient modifier? Okay, let me repeat again. So whenever you want to move the object in the network level, if you want to transfer any object in the network, object means it can have any object. Okay, employee object or customer object or anything, whatever you want. If any data you want to move or some data you want to write into some file in some other folder, anything. Okay, in that case the object must be serializable. Compulsory we need to implement, the class must implement serializable interface. Okay, so inside that class there may be a multiple parameters, right? The class whichever you want to transfer, it contains of multiple properties. Okay, so like in our case, I want to transfer that employee class object in the from my system to some other system. Okay, or I want to transfer this object to some other people are calling my API. So we need to transfer this object from one place to another place. In that case, compulsory, remember, implements serializable interface is compulsory required. Otherwise, we'll get of exception, not serializable exception will get at runtime. Okay, that is the first point. Next next one is, we'll take off one example also. Okay, before that let me read the 2 points. If anything, any point is not clear, let me know. Okay, normally first, transient modifier is applicable only for the variables. Transient applicable only for the variables. Okay, in the context of only serialization, in only in serialization context only we will use it. Yeah, see, the transient modifier is applicable only for variables. Variables means these are properties of a class or variables of a class. The transient keyword or transient modifier is applicable only for variables, not for classes, not for methods. Okay, now at the time of serialization, okay, so if you don't want to save, if you don't want to serialize, or if you don't want to transfer some of the properties, some of the properties of a values, some of the properties, okay, some of the properties of property values, if you don't want to transfer in the network level, then due to some reasons, some security reasons or some firewall reason. Okay, so those properties we should keep with transient modifier. Then even though if you are setting the value for that, so the JVM will ignore the values of the transient variable values. So transient property values will be ignored by the JVM, and it will add of default values at the time of serialization. Okay, now let's go to that point. Yeah, at the time of serialization, if you don't want to save the value of a particular variable, then particular variable to meet some security constraints, then we should declare that variable as a transient keyword, transient modifier. Okay, so what internally the JVM will do means, at the time of serialization, jvm ignores the JVM ignores the original value of transient variables. Original value of transient variable means, let's say, in the actual class, in the actual class, have created of employee object. I have created a employee object. So employee ID I have set the value, username, password, all are I set the values. Okay, but whichever the variables are declared as transient, JVM ignores the original value. JVM ignores the original. What is the password actual value? Just assume IBC test. ABC at test is the password, just assume. So the password field is declared as transient, right or not? Even though we are setting as some passwords by using shutter method at the time of this line, at the time of writing that object into the file. So the JVM ignores this actual value. JVM will ignore this the IBC test actual value, and it will set the default value as for the password. Default value, what is the password type? Password is type of what is the type? Type is string. String, right? String default value is null. Okay, string default value is null. So that time it will set default value as null, and that object will be injected here into the serializable. Okay, now we'll see the example again. Okay, we'll repeat it. Now go to, so I have created as these things. So first, if you want to create the employee class, implements serializable. Okay, now go to another class. Let's go to another class. So what I'm doing, I have created of employee object, employee emp equal to new employee. I'm setting off all the data. I'm setting off employee ID, employee name, username and password. All the data I have setted. And so what is my work I'm doing? I am serializing. So I want to save, I want to transfer this object. Okay. Now I want to save in some file. My requirement is I want to save my employee object into some file in some system, in the system or in the project. Okay. Now if you want to save in the out of the project or separately, then we need to use of object output stream. We need to use of object output stream. Now, so OOS, object output stream, give any name of the object. Okay, any name for object output stream, object. New object output stream of it will take the input as it will take some input as where exactly I want to store this employee data. Where exactly you want to store that data? First, we need to create new file output stream. I want to store that into some file. I want to store the data into some file as a file, the output as a file. Now what is the name of that file that we need to give here? Okay, so now in this line it will just create that file. Okay, it doesn't contain anything. Okay, now to which object you want to move to that file, to which object you want to, which object data you want to move to in this file, which object data you want to write into that empd dot serializable file. Now OOS, object output stream dot write object, where we need to write, we need to write inside this file, right? This employee object, which object you want to write? Employee object you want to write into that file. Okay, now close that OOS. Okay, it is of input output operations, right? We'll close it. Now let's delete it. Now let's run it. Object is stored. Now let's refresh the project. It is of employee D is created. Now let's say for suppose you want to store in the system, not within the project. You want to store in some C drive or some D drive. Then what we need to do is 1 second. Someone is waiting in the lobby. Yeah. Now what we need to do is now go to some C drive or D drive. Let's say for example I want to store in this path. Okay. Now let's create. Okay. Now let's try. Now, do you have any file here in this folder? Right now, no, right? Now, what I'm telling to this program, write the employee object into this file and move that file to this path. So D drive, Java batch, sorry, John batch and core Java folder. Inside that, create this file. Now let's go and do that. Object is stored. Now go to this folder. Is it created or not? Is it there before? Guys, is it before it is there? No, right? Now, yes. Now we will read that file from that path. Remove this one and let's read that file from that folder. Now let's, yeah. Now what I'm doing is, let me implement it. Now, if I'm reading like this, will you get exception or will it run? I have deleted empd.scr file here, right? Now let's see. It will give us a file not found exception. See, file not found exception because you have given, you are trying to read the data from empd.scr file, right? The system cannot find the file specified path. I have deleted, right? Let's say give off this one. You and now just to change small thing also. Just I removed of JAV. Okay, JAV. So do you have this path on the folder? Just I removed of one character, right? In the folder. So in that case, it cannot identify that folder, right? So it will give off exception, file not found exception in the specified path. Is it giving error or not? Let's say now, yeah, back again. Now in that path, the file is there, right? Now let's see whether it will read or not. Is it read the file, right? The file is readed, and yeah. So and the last password is we made it as transient. Yes, that password data is not transferred in the network level and it is not stored in that object also. That is the reason it is back again with null, whatever that is, null value. Default value is stored. The same value are getting back again. Is it clear now, this part or not? You want me to repeat again? I think someone asked. Clear, guy? Whoever asked this question, right? Yeah. Now, now we are going to volatile. The next topic is volatile. So now we came to know about the transient, right? Due to the reason is if you want to move any object in the network level, whichever the properties you don't want to move, we are making that property as transient. Now, volatile is also applicable for volatile. Okay, volatile is also a modifier that is applicable only for variables. Even this is also only for variables, not for classes and methods. Okay, when we need this volatile modifier is let's say in previous case, in previous there is one sync, yeah, here what we are doing, here I am making this method as synchronized, right or not? Let's say mm, I'm making this method as synchronized. So why I'm making at a time, I want to allow only one thread to execute this method to avoid getting of inconsistent result. To get off inconsistent result, to avoid that, we are making the method as synchronized. If you are making method synchronized, at a time only one thread will, at a time only one thread will access that until completion of that method by the thread, it will not give chance to execute of any other thread until finish its work. All other thread has to wait. Okay, now let's will take off one more example. Now class class uh, yeah, just assume. Wide. So into B equal to 30. Let it be 30. Okay. Now here I am doing B equal to A plus 20. I'm giving as the value. I'm doing of some operations. Okay. Leave it out. Some calculations I am doing. Okay. Now just 1 second. Now, what I am doing, so whenever we are doing, let's assume this method is executing by multiple threads. This method is executing by multiple threads at a time. So, in that case, so what JVM will give whenever this method is executing without synchronization. Okay. So, let's say first thread is started its execution. It is completed up to, it is completed up to, just assume up to 11th line, up to 11th line. Okay, now second thread JVM is giving chance to start execution of another thread also. The first thread execution is completed up to 11th line. Again second thread will start its execution. Okay, that time a value is 20 is there. So but before that the thread 1 is making that a value as 30, right? The thread 1 is started its execution completed of 11 up to 11th line. Okay. The other thread also will come and execute. It starts its execution. Okay. By the time A value is 30. By the time A value is 30. So that time what it will give? Again just assume that is completed up to this only 10th line only, not 11th line. Then it will give the value as 30 because already A value it is made by thread 1 as 30, but actually that value should not correct. So in that case that is giving of inconsistent result, irrelevant result it will give. Okay, so in that case if every thread want to if every thread want to maintain its own copy of the variables, let's say thread 1 is making a value is 30, b value is just assume 50. Okay, then again other thread will start execution this method, just assume. Okay, then in that case for another thread it will create a separate copy. Let's say for example equal to a plus 30, just assume. Okay. Now let's let's take paint. Okay, now what I am doing, now I am created of in this case when any thread one thread is calling, just assume thread 1 is calling of main thread method. Thread, that let me copy paste of that code. Yeah, now let me pass a small a or else just assume t dot one method remove of these things. Control Shift F. Okay, we need of some exception also. No need of exception. Now, what I am doing? So I have created of a class object. I am calling of m1 method. Okay. So here I have created of two threads. Okay, two threads I have created. Let's say first thread is started. So first thread created its object, and then it is calling of start method. Then what it will do internally? It will create of one object. One object. Now what it will do? So internally a class contains the method m1 is m1 method contains of a value is just as up to this line, up to this it is executed, just assume. Now a value by this time, what is the a value? A is called initially 20. Now I'm making that a in this line is becoming 20 plus 30 is becoming 50. By the initially a value is 20. A is 20. Okay. Now after this line, after this line, in the 11th line it is becoming 50. A is equal to a plus 30, right? A is already 20, right? Now what it will do? It will override this value. Okay, it will override this value and it will become of 50. Okay, it will become, a value will become 50, right? Now after that the JVM is giving chance to execute of this. It will pass its execution. T1 thread will pass its execution, and JVM will give chance to start other thread to start its work. Internally even this also will call this m1 method, because we are calling of run method. Internally start method will call run method. Run method internally it is calling of m1 method. Again again it is going to create one more. Again it is going to create of one more. Sorry, it is going to create of one more. Now in this case it is initially it is starting off initially whenever it is starting, already a value is 50. A value is, it is starting with, instead of 20 it is going to start off 50. It is going to start with 50. So then in that case actually it should start with 20, but already it is made by, other thread is made by 50. Even with that value only it will start with that a equal to 50 it will start. And then in this line it will become as 50 plus 30 80. This will remove and then it will make it as 80. Then in this case it is not the correct result actually, right? So we'll get a irrelevant result. To avoid that we will make we will make these variables as volatile. Volatile means VOI, vola, sorry, volatile. Okay. So if you are making the variable as volatile, then internally it will create a separate copy of each and every variable. It will create a separate copy for, so for this object it will create separate a variable and b variable. For this it will create a separate copy. Then in this case whenever the thread 1 is starting its execution, then it will take only 50 value instead of, here it will start with 20 only. Okay, in that case the inconsistent problem will overcome that. Okay, now let's go and read the document. Now now volatile is the modifier applicable for only for variables, but not for classes, but not for classes not for classes and methods. Okay, but not for classes and methods. Now, if a value of a variable is, if the value of a variable is keep on changing by multiple threads, okay, if a value of variable is keep on changing by multiple threads, keep on changing by multiple threads, then there may be a chance of data inconsistency problem will rise. In that case, data inconsistency problem will occur. Okay, so we can solve that problem. We can solve that problem by using volatile modifier. What it will do internally means, now let's see. So if the variable declared as volatile, variable declared as volatile, then for every thread, JVM will create a separate copy of separate copy. What separate copy? This A variable and B variable will create as a separate copy for each and every thread. Then in that case, it won't give off the inconsistency problem. Okay, every modification performed by a thread will take in separate local copy, so that there is no effect on the remaining threads. So whichever thread, let's say my thread is doing some modification, A value is 30, B value is just 20. Okay, and some other thread is doing some other calculation. Then whenever my thread is coming resume back again, the starts JVM giving chance to my thread again to start its execution, then whatever the local copy which thread 1 contains, it will use its own properties instead of shared properties. Okay, the main advantage of volatile keyword is even is we can overcome data inconsistency problem. Okay, but that there is some disadvantage also there. So that is that so for each and every thread we need to maintain a separate copy. That will increase the complexity and maintenance of program. Okay, so it will cause of some performance issues also. Let's say our program is going to create of some 100 threads. Okay, so 100 times it is creating its own local copy means it is not good way of practice. But if there is compulsory we need to use of that requirement means then in that case only we should go for that. Until unless we should not choose this requirement. Okay, and it is going to soon, and almost all volatile is going to be deprecate. Okay, now let's read this point. But the main disadvantage of volatile keyword is okay, creating and maintaining a separate copy for each and every threads. So it is increasing the complexity of the program. So that time the program will get of some confusion, so lot of complexity also will be involved in this case. Okay, so and it will create of some performance problems also. It will create some performance issues also. Now, if there is no specific requirement, if there is no specific requirement, until and unless don't use that volatile keyword. Volatile keyword should not use it. If compulsory that without that we can't achieve our requirement means then only we should go for this modifier. Until unless don't use it. Okay, and it is almost deprecated. It is so now in the new year versions we no need to use this one because it is going to be deprecating. Okay, now final means the value will never be changed normally, will never be changed. So whereas volatile variable means the keep on value will be changing, right? Volatile volatile final is a illegal combination. So we can't give volatile and final both in a single variable. That is of illegal combination. We should not give both. Okay, that's what volatile modifier. Okay, next one is interface. Next one is interface. What is interface? Now let's start. Is it clear, guys? Before that volatile, moving to interface, volatile modifier is, what is the use of volatile modifier? Let's say if three people are executing the same method in at a time. Okay, so out of 100 lines of method, only if the first person is completed its completion execution, only just 20 lines of code. Okay, in between in calculation out of 20 lines, that value of whatever the value of variables is already modified. If some other person is trying to execute the same method from starting again, then it will use of the updated values whatever done by the previous person. So in that case it is not, it is going to give some inconsistent result, irrelevant result. Okay, to avoid that we need to use of volatile keyword. Is it clear, guys? Before going to, before moving to interface. Okay, now Now we'll go for a interface. We'll go for a interface. Now, so let's F. So normally how can we create class? Class A equal to like this we will create a class. It contains of methods, right? Variables. Correct or not? This is of classes. Okay, equal to 100. Just assume this is one class. It contains the method which contains body, or the method which contains body. Correct or not? Now, but in case of interface, in case of interface, it contains only abstract methods. How to create interface means not with a class. It should be of interface. Should be interface. Give of interface some INTF. Okay, some interface name. Write of methods. Whatever the methods that we are writing inside the interface, whatever the methods that we are writing the methods interface, it will be of abstract methods. Abstract wide M1. Okay. It should end with semicolon. Wide M2. It should end with semicolon. If interface with interface name, it contains of two methods. Okay, but by default compiler will treat by default compiler will treat as whatever the methods inside every method inside the interface is by default abstract. By default abstract. The compiler will consider abstract is there by default. If you are not specifying also, no error. Okay, if you want we can take an example. Okay, and whenever we are, it contains of only unimplemented methods. The INTF interface contains of two unimplemented methods. Whoever required these methods, okay, then they are responsible to provide implementation or body for these methods. Let's say class, okay, class B implements. This keyword is compulsory. Implements, implements INTF implements INTF. Then in this case, whatever the methods that part of whatever the methods part of this interface, we need to provide implementation for all the methods of abstract methods. Otherwise, we need to make this class as abstract again. Okay, we'll take it off some example and then we'll do it. Now let's proposal. Let's create a one package com dot techno dot ibc dot intf. Okay, intf interface. Click on finish. Now let me create one interface. Let me create one interface. Interface is test intf. Just assume test interface. See, it is created of public interface interface name. Normally class means public class class name. Okay, in the interface, in interface, let's write off two methods. Void method 1 or m1. Okay, let's create a semicolon. Void m2. Okay, now I have created two methods. Okay, but no implementation is provided, guys. If I am trying also, it's giving error. Abstract methods do not specify a body. Do not specify body for the abstract methods. Okay, that's what it is giving. We can't provide it. Now, so how to provide implementation for these methods means we need to create a class. We need to create class class. Okay, test. Okay. Now, so directly we can't provide implementation. What we need to do? We need to use after this class. We need to use a keyword called implements. We need to use implements. What we need to implement? We need to provide implementation for the INTF interface test intf. Just give this implements this give interface name, then it will give us some error again. The error is compulsory whenever we are providing, whenever we are implementing interface, compulsory the abstract methods are unimplemented methods of the intf interface, unimplemented of that interface must and should provide implementation in the child class. In this implemented class, in the implemented class, we must and should provide implementation for the abstract methods. Okay, now just to keep the cursor on the class, it is showing some add unimplemented methods. It is showing add unimplemented methods, right? Just to click on that, automatically all the unimplemented methods body will be created. So inside that, if you want, you can write the code. System.out.println of m1 in test class. Okay, m1 in test class. Now m2 in test class implementation. m2 in m2 method in test class implementation. Okay, now let's say out of these two methods of interface, if I am providing implementation for only one method is committed, just assume, then in this case also it will give error. So in that case compulsory we should make the class as abstract. That case compulsory we should make abst or abstract, otherwise it will give error. So then next, who is responsible to provide that implementation for the other m2 method means whoever the child class of this class, the child class of test class is responsible to provide implementation. Now let's class test test a. Okay, extends test a extends of which class I want to extend? Test class. I want to extend of test class. Now, now let's see. It is giving error. Now there is one unimplemented method. One implemented method is added in the test class. Now there is one more unimplemented, that is called m2 method. That it will just click on add unimplemented methods. Automatically only one unimplemented method will show as override. Okay. Now you can write off this here. Okay, even if you don't want to provide implementation for m2 method in the test A also, compulsory we should make this class as abstract. Okay, now, now let's go to the documentation and then we'll start it. Now interface. Okay, inside interface every method is always abstract method. Every method is always abstract method, whether we are declaring or not. If you are not declaring, always by default compiler will add abstract internally. Okay, now whenever we are whenever we are implementing the interface, whenever we are implementing the interface, let's say the test class is providing implementation for a interface, test intf interface. It contains of just assume two methods. Okay, for each and every method of that interface, for each and every method of that interface we have to provide implementation. Whatever the methods that part of this interface, compulsory we need to provide implementation, otherwise we have to declare the class as abstract. Otherwise we have to declare this class as abstract. Okay, only one method have provided implementation, other method I have not provided, committed, right? Other method I have provided, other method I have not provided implementation, then in that case compulsory the class must be class, declare the class as abstract. Then who is responsible? The next level child class is responsible to provide implementation. Okay, whoever using this test class, they are responsible to provide implementation for the other unimplemented method m2. Now let's say I have created one more class test a, extending of text. inside this test class only for one method I have provided implementation. Okay, there is one more method, that m2 method is not provided implementation, which implements of test intf, that I have provided implementation in the next level child class, that is responsible to provide implementation. Even this also don't want to provide implementation, then even this class also we need to make as abstract. Okay, abstract. Then whoever using of one more class, just test B extends test A. Then in this case it will give. If this class also don't want to provide implementation, then we need to make this class also as abstract. Else we need to provide implementation. Okay. Now last point. Every interface method is always every interface method is always public and abstract. Every interface method, let's say in this class, even though we are simply adding as a void m1, but internally compiler will add as a public abstract. It will add by default by the compiler, even if you are adding simple void main, but compiler at the time of compiling the code, it will add public abstract. Okay, so every interface method is always public and abstract, whether we are declaring or not. Hence, whenever we are implementing, whenever we are implementing an interface method, compulsory we should declare as public. Now, where means now even though if I am removing these two as at the time of implementation, see I didn't write any code for this, but by default the code is generated with public. By default it is generated with public. If I am removing this, it is giving off error. Cannot reduce the visibility of inherited method. By default, here it is public. We are not added, but compulsory it is added by the compiler. So we can't reduce the visibility. We can't reduce the visibility of our method. Highest priority is public. So if you are declaring public, then anywhere we can access it. Okay. If here it is public means compulsory in the implemented class also must be there public. Okay. That's what the point this is giving. Okay. Now, example. Next, go to I have given example whatever we have discussed. Interface name with two methods. Okay, and in the other program, other class, test IMPL class implements of test interface. It is provided implementers for these two methods. Now, what is the extents and implements? We used of two things. Now we are using the words as two things. What is that? Implements I am using here. Here I am using as extents. Here I am using extents. Here I am using implements. When we need to use implements, when we need to use extents means, let's say if I want to, if any class, just assume a class can extend another class. Let's say I have created one class. If any other class want to extend of another class, it means getting of other class properties into current class, then we can use of extends keyword. Okay, if it is a interface, if any class, if any class wants to provide implementation, if any class if any class want to provide implementation for any interface, then we need to use implements keyword. Then we need to use implements keyword and one more rules. Okay, so let's say this is a interface. This is interface. If any class want to use, if any class want to use this interface means compulsory that class has to use implements keyword only. That class has to use implements keyword only. Let's remove it. Remove this also. Just assume even this also add of that pending unimplemented method. Let's suppose m2 method. Now, so this contains of two abstract methods. If any class want to use this interface, compulsory we need to use implements. Compulsory we need to provide implementation for this interface. Let's say if I want to use of this class, if I want to use of this class, then we need to use of we need to use extends keyword class just a extends, okay, of test. Now, if any class, a class can extends another class only. A class cannot extends interface. A class can extends another class. Extending means then whatever the methods of this class also will come into this class. Okay? Whatever the methods and variables that is part of this one, it is coming to class A also. I'm extending that. Okay? Now, a class can extend, a class can use of extends, okay, and if you want to use of implements interface means then we need to use of implements, okay. And one more point, a class can extends of at most only one class, at most only one class. Let's say class B is also there, just assume a class can extend at most only one class. At a time, only one class can be extended. We can't comma B, I can't use it. It will give off error. A class cannot extend more than one class. Okay, but but a interface can extend a interface can extend any number of interface can extend any number of interfaces. Let's say NTF, okay, interface A, okay. Let's say class sorry, interface B, okay. Let's interface C, okay. Interface C is also what happened? D is already there. Use of Z, use of D. Okay. Use of A, C, and D. I have three interfaces. Okay. Now I am going to create of one more interface. Interface E. Interface E extends A comma C comma D. This is possible. A interface can extend of any number of interfaces. Interface can extend of any number of interface, but a class can extend only one class. A class, let me go of one more example class. Class G. Just assume started G. Now I am going to create of another C, H, and I. I have three classes. Okay, I have three classes. I have three classes. G, H, I. Okay, let me create of one more class J. Extends J extends only one class at a time. One class. It cannot extend of multiple classes. That is not possible. Let's try to give H comma I. So it will give error. It will not allow to extends. A class can extend at most only one class. Okay. Let's say a class is extending another class, and that class can implement multiple interface again. Okay. Interface A comma C comma D. See, this is possible again. Class can extend, class J is extending of G, but this class is implementing of multiple interface again. Okay. A interface can implement, a interface can extend multiple interfaces. Okay. A interface can extend multiple interface. A class can extend one class and multiple interface. One class and multiple interface. Let's remove this also and implements multiple interface. A class implements three interfaces. This is also possible again. Okay. Now let's go and see. extends versus implements. Okay, a class can extend only one class at a time. A class can extends only one class at a time. It will not allow to extend of multiple classes. But an interface can extend any number of interfaces simultaneously. See, interface A, B, C I have created. Interface D is extending of multiple interfaces. This is possible. Okay, interface can extend any number of interfaces, but class can extend only one class at a time. Okay, now a class can implement any number of interfaces simultaneously. A class can implement, see, a class J can implement any number of interfaces simultaneously. It is implementing of A interface, C interface, D interface at a time. Okay. Now, a class can extend another class and can implement any number of interface simultaneously. A class can extend, let's say, extend class G, and that G class can implement any number of interface again. This is also a valid scenario. Okay, that's what this one, the below one, the meaning example. Okay, now next is for every interface unimplemented method. For every interface unimplemented method, let's say class A is there. Let's add of void m1 unimplemented method. See, for every interface unimplemented method is always public and abstract. We can't declare interface unimplemented methods with the following modifiers. We should not use these modifiers for the interface methods. That's what the meaning. Okay. Next. So till now we have discussed the methods, abstract methods in the interface, abstract methods in the interface only, but not variables, but not variables. Let's say if I'm creating of, if I'm adding of one variable, int a equal to just a 10, by default, by default, what happened? This is common. The method is added right here. That is the reason it is giving error. No issue. Okay. Here I have added a method, right? Here I have added some unimplemented method. Compulsory we need to use implements. A class contains A interface contains one method, right? We need to provide implementation. Otherwise, you need to declare this class as abstract. No error. Okay. Now let's say till now we have discussed about only abstract methods in the interface. Now I'll discuss about variables. If I'm declaring any variable inside, if I'm declaring any variable simply int a equal 10. Okay, interface it by default. Every interface variable by default is it contains of public static final. Static, static and final. These things will be added by compiler if you are not adding it. If you are not adding this, just simply you are adding t a equal 0. But that is internally it is a public static final variable. Even though if you are not declaring also, compiler will add this part. Okay. Now next. So every interface variable compulsory it should be with compulsory it should be with some initialization. It should be with some initialization values. Otherwise, it will not accept it. Let's say without value, without variable value, initialization, interface will not accept that. Otherwise, it will give off error. Normally, in case of classes, we can use directly int b equal to 100. So, either we can use value or without that also it will not accept anything. It won't give any error. But in case of interface, in interfaces, the variables must be initialized with values. Initialized with some value. Only declaration is it will give compilation error. See, the blank field may not be even initialized. Compulsory we should provide initialization with some value. Okay. Now, now apart from this, normally what I told, By default, I said every interface variable is, even if you are declaring int a, but internally it is a public, static, and final. Right? Now, if you are trying to use, if you are trying to use, if any other modifiers, if you are trying to use any other modifiers for this, now let's say instead of this, if I am using private, it will not accept it. See, it is giving error. Either are protected. See, it is giving error. By default, even if you're not giving also, it is treating as public static final. Okay? If you're not giving also fine, but compulsory we should not give off private or protected or transient or volatile. Even TRA transient. Transient. Even this also will not accept. It is giving error. Even volatile also. Okay? Volatile. Even this also will not accept. See, it is giving off error. Private we should not use, protected we should not use, and transient we should not use, and volatile also we should not use. Okay? Only by default it is of public. If you are giving everything, fine, no issue. Okay? Even if you are not using also this one internally, it will take care of that. That's what the interface variables. Let's see. Every interface variable is every interface variable is always public static final, whether we are declaring or not. If you are not declaring, compiler will add it. If you are adding it, compiler will not add it. Okay. Now, for interface variables, compulsory we should perform initialization at the time of declaration. So I am declaring one variable as int a. So at the time of declaration itself, we should give some value for that variable. Otherwise, it will not accept it. It will give off compilation error. Otherwise, it will give off compilation error. Okay. Now, next point. Every interface variable is always by default public static final. I said right in the first point itself. And we can't declare with the following other modifiers like private or protected or transient or volatile. So with this, we should not use that this variable. Okay. Private also we should not use. Okay. Protected also we should not use. Anything already we have discuss this one. Protected also we should not use. Transient and volatile. All these things we should not use any other modifiers. Okay. Private, protected, transient, and volatile. These modifiers we should not use for the variables in interface. Okay. That's what this. Next. Inside. Next one second. Yeah. Next, inside implementation class, we can access the interface variables. Okay, we can access whatever the variable that we have given. Access we can access. Okay, we can't modify its value because it is already final variable. It's already a variable is final, so we can't modify that variable. It is giving off cannot assign value to the final variable x. Okay, let's say for example, int save it. Let's leave off all other things. Class A, go and remove all these things. So implements okay A. Inside this there is a method called add unimplemented method. Now if I am what is the interface variable here? A. Let's try A equal to 200. It's giving off see it is giving we can one second we need to use implements right somewhere. Yeah, implements variable A. Now yes, it will not accept this variable. It will not allow that. So already it is a variable is it is assigned with some value. By default it is a final variable. Okay, we can't modify that. We can't modify this value. Let's one second, not this. Let's write main method and a equal to 200. A equal to 200 variable here, right? See, a field a dot a cannot be assigned. So because it is already a final variable. We can't modify that value. We can't modify this value. Okay, it is already a final variable. Okay, that is the reason it will not accept that. That's the point is this one. Inside implementation class, we can access the interface variable, but we can't modify its value. The meaning of that. Next. Next is if an interface does not contain any methods, and by implementing that interface, if our objects will get some ability, such is called as marker interface. Okay, let's say I told you, not sorry, I didn't. So I told you one interface that is serializable interface. Serializable interface. Now, if any interface we are providing implementation but does not contain any method. It does not contain any method. Where is that? 1 second. Which one? Somewhere. Sync method, yeah. Employee. There is some employee, right? Where, which class we have discussed that? Employee. Today we have discussed the employee, right? In where? Synchronizer transient. Somewhere in transient, yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Now I told this is the implement serializable interface. So it doesn't contain any methods. Doesn't contain doesn't contain any methods, abstract methods. But simply it is providing implementation just to implement serializable interface. If any interface that doesn't contain any doesn't contain any abstract methods and giving some behavior, then those type of interfaces will call it as a marker interfaces. Those type of interfaces will call it as a marker interfaces. The example for marker interface are serializable, clonable, random access, single thread model. These interfaces does not contain any methods, but will give some instructions. These interfaces will give some instructions to the JVM like yes, if any class is providing implements a serializable interface, then that class should get the behavior of moving in the or transferring that object in the network level. That behavior will understood by the JVM. Okay, if our class is implementing serializable, even though it doesn't contain any methods, but it is going to give some behavior. Okay, if an interface does not contain any methods, and by implementing that interface, if our objects get some ability or some behavior, such type of interfaces will called as a marker interfaces. Okay, these are examples of marker interfaces. Okay, next. Next is by implementing serializable interface, our objects can saved in the file or can travel across the network. By saving in the file or can travel across the network, by implementing clonable interface, our objects are in a position to reproduce the exact. I want to create a duplicate copy. I want to create of, let's say, for example, where is that? Yeah, let's say here G class is there, right? G class, just create of G small g equal to new G. Okay. Now I created object of G class. Okay. G dot clone method is there. G dot clone. So what it will do? It will create of one more copy of G class object. It is exact same copy it will create. Even though in this case also the clonable interface also does not contain any method, but it's going to give some behavior. So why do we need to clone that exact copy of some other class, exact copy of other object? Then we can use of this clone. Okay. See, the clonable interface will use for that to create of exact copy of duplicate copies for an objects. Okay, and we can write default and static methods in interface. We can write default and static methods inside interface. This is the new feature introduced in Java 1.8. This is the till now we have discussed only we can write only we can write abstract methods only inside the class, inside the interface. That's what I told, right? Let's say interface A. It is having only abstract methods. We can write off default methods also, but default keyword is must and should use it. Default keyword must and should use it. Otherwise, will not. See, M2 default method. Okay. So even we can use of static methods also. Even static. Even this is also possible. Okay. Default and static methods is also possible from Java 1.8 in interfaces. Okay. Now, how to access this means we can use of by using directly the interface name. See, a dot m3 method. See directly it is not going to return anything. Now let's run it. See, M3 method default method is called. Okay. Next, we can write along with the abstract methods. We can write of others also. Okay, default methods and static methods. Both we can write it. Next, okay. Yeah, I think anything is there. Yeah, nothing. Up to this is interfaces, guys. Tomorrow I'm going to start OOPS concept. Is it clear, guys? Interfaces? Is it clear or not, guys? Yeah, practice it today. Okay. If any doubt is there, tomorrow sometime we'll discuss it. Okay. Practice and then come tomorrow. If any doubts is there, we'll discuss it again tomorrow. If not, if you don't have any doubts means that you are not practicing 100%. That is sure. If you are not having any doubts means 100% you are not doing practice. The meaning of that. Okay. Okay, guys. That's what for today's class. We'll meet again tomorrow.